Just off the west coast of Scotland in the Outer Hebrides is a little-known cluster of islands called the Shiants. The name means haunted or enchanted. And while the last people left over a century ago, every summer these deserted shores become the stage for an extraordinary show. Great waves of seabirds return here from far out in the Atlantic, coming back to mate and breed. For many of us, the seabird is a noisy scavenger, gulls that plague our seafronts. But these annual visitors to the Shiants are altogether more mysterious and surprising. I'm Adam Nicolson, a writer. And for summer after summer, I've been able to witness this great spectacle, ever since my father first brought me here as a boy, 50 years ago. The more you get to know about these birds, the more extraordinary they are. Any idea that somehow we have a monopoly on ingenuity or resilience or persistence in the face of difficulty absolutely goes out of the window. But now, despite this resilience, there's a crisis. In Scotland alone, 40% of our seabirds have already been lost.
There is apparently no food available for them to bring back to the chicks, let alone feed themselves.
This year, for the first time, I'm going to immerse myself in the lives of the birds to try and understand what's happening. It would just be such a catastrophe if they weren't here. They're as much part of this place as the grass. I'll explore man's part in their decline, how our lives were once intertwined with theirs, how we used to depend on them for food.
It was like a carnival. If you can imagine a carnival where people queued and got buckets of seabirds.
I'll go to Iceland, a seabird stronghold, where puffin hunting is still part of everyday life, but where the crisis has hit even harder, with some colonies all but wiped out.
In some cases we come to a colony which all the chicks died within framework of a few days. 130,000 some dead chicks everywhere.
I need to know if this catastrophe will come to the Shiants. Is there a wave of extinction sweeping the North Atlantic? Could we really be facing the last of our great seabird summers? Set in a stretch of sea called the Minch, the Shiants are actually 3 separate islands. Their cliffs and rock-strewn slopes make up one of the most important bird places of Europe. Over 150,000 puffins make their home here every summer. They're joined by a whole cast of other characters. The sleek, stylish razorbill, an elegant chocolatey guillemot, who together with a puffin make up a family of deep-diving birds called auks. They share this rocky home with the bigger and more aggressive shag, a close cousin of the cormorant. The fulmar, a relative of the albatross, cuts graceful circles in the air, and the kittiwake, named after its distinctive call, makes its nest clinging to the cliff face. Together, they all bring a pulsating life to the islands. I'm going to spend the summer with the birds and follow their fascinating story, while trying to understand the crisis that threatens to end this remarkable show. For thousands of years, the birds have shared the Shiants with families of shepherds and farmers who've left their mark on the landscape. But the last of them left over 100 years ago, when the pull of the modern world became too strong. Today, the one remaining house is used for visitors only, and life here is unchanged. There's no electricity, no loo, and no running water. what I'm doing, well, if you forgive plastic and modern saucepan, what I'm doing is exactly what people would have been doing here since the Bronze Age. And it's delicious, pure water. It's just seeping down through the hillside. I did once come and there was a dead sheep lying in this. It wasn't so brilliant. This simple existence makes it easy to become embedded in the natural world of the Shiants. And for the last 50 years, I've been able to witness the life of the islands, all thanks to a decision made by my father, Nigel, also a writer. In 1937, when my dad was a student at Oxford, and his mother saw an ad in the paper saying islands for sale, early lambs, 1,200 quid. So he came up here for the day and fell in love with them and bought them there and then. He brought a visitor's book, and this is the first visitor's book. And it's very, very much like my dad, because everyone else writes screeds and screeds in these things. And he says, Nigel Nicolson, a month alone with a dog. And that's it. For me, coming here year after year has meant spending time on the islands both with and without the birds. I've been here late in the year when the birds aren't here, and that is really curious. It's like a cemetery. There's plenty of Scottish coastline, not unlike this, which has no birds. And I go there and I think it's a book with, half the alphabet missing. It's almost as if the whole meaning has dropped out if the birds aren't there. It's early May, and after spending nearly 8 months dispersed throughout the North Atlantic, the puffins and razorbills are making their first tentative appearance in the seas around the Shiants. They've been out there, in the wild Atlantic, no landmarks in sight. It's pure open ocean, totally alone. But you can't lay an egg in the sea. And so they've got to come back here. It's rock that brings them here. And so spring comes on and the days lengthen. Then they're back here finding their wife with this desperate and fierce urgency to breed. Although puffins and razorbills can live for 30 years or more, every summer they return to the same partner and set about getting reacquainted. Hissing, billing and cooing. It's all displayed, all... Come on, sweetheart. As the puffins arrive for the summer breeding season, they change from their grey winter appearance to this flamboyant orange bill and eye makeup, advertising their health to their mate. These early signs of life on the Shiants are promising, particularly with so many reported declines elsewhere, and I didn't have to wait long to be reassured that the birds would return en masse. It's puffins. They're all puffins in that. It's a giant wheel of them. It's so astonishing, these birds that have been dispersed across literally millions of square miles of ocean are now gathering here again to make the next generation. They're just circulating like that over and along the colony there. It's phenomenal. I find it very moving. One of the reasons the birds come to the Shiants in such numbers is that the islands provide a safe haven. There's no people here and no predators like foxes or stoats. But there is one extremely unwelcome resident, an invasive non-native that lives in every nook and cranny, the black rat. There was a wreck in the 1740s, and the rats on the wreck, it was on the very outermost rock of the Galters over there, and they swam ashore and have colonised every island since. It's now thought that the rat population here swells to as many as 10,000 every summer. The rats prey on the seabirds. They eat the eggs, they eat the chicks. It certainly means that there are fewer seabirds here than there would otherwise be if there weren't any rats. The argument is that seabirds across the whole of this ocean are in an increasingly desperate condition. And so if we could do something for them here, if we can just relieve a local burden, then that can only be a good thing. The continued health of the Shiants colonies is considered vital to the future of Britain's seabirds by the RSPB.
Hello, hello.
And as part of their response to the wider crisis, they've committed to a major plan to eradicate the rats, costing nearly £1 million.
Hold it tight. Hi, Shiant. Nice to see you again. How are things?
It's meant that this year the Shiants have never been busier,
Well done.
playing host to groups of bird lovers and donors to the project. The RSPB in Scotland is headed by Stuart Housden. I wondered, with birds on the Shiants apparently doing so well, what he thought the project could achieve.
Some man in Tarford said to me the other day, you haven't got enough. What are you on about? Got plenty of birds there.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
Well, I think the answer is we want a colony that's exporting more and growing more.
Exporting
there's other
them, yeah,
that's the
exactly.
point.
Yeah. As a kind of seed bank.
Yeah, I'm with that 100%.
It's an ambitious plan, not just to protect the birds already here, but to strengthen and grow the colonies as a kind of insurance for what might lie ahead. The eradication itself has to wait until the winter, when the rat population is at its lowest, and it's not going to be easy. If one pregnant rat is missed, the whole project could fail. An RSPB team led by ecologist Davide Scridel has started to survey the islands for rat activity. How do you know that the rats are actually here? Is there any sign?
We found presence of rat throughout the island, not just along the seabird colonies. When we, for example, survey on the border field, we'll surround the area of interest with some chocolate wax, which is a well-known method of proving.
And this is rat nibble?
And this is rat being very
rat nibble.
loving the chocolate and coming to nibble this, and you can see the clear incisor.
So they're not far away.
No, they're there.
But rats are not an issue everywhere. In colonies where the seabirds are being hit hardest, the problem seems to be out at sea where they find their food. This is shown most clearly by the noisiest summer visitor to the Shiants, the kittiwake. Unlike the auks, the puffins, guillemots and razorbills, which can dive as deep as 100 metres or more to catch fish, the kittiwake, seen here feeding, can only forage near the surface, making it more vulnerable to changes in the marine environment.
The key thing about the kittiwake is that it's quite a specialist, you know. It doesn't go very far and it can't fish very deep. So if there is a slight variation in the conditions, then it'll read straight away into kittiwake chick production. And so they are in a way a barometer of how things are.
The kittiwake colony here on the Shiants is as good as I remember. suggesting the seas around here are providing enough fish for the birds. But it's not like that everywhere in Scotland. To try and understand why, I'm leaving the islands to go and see for myself. Less than 150 miles northeast of the Shiants, at Marwick Head on Orkney, there are kittiwake colonies in steep decline. These cliffs have been part of an RSPB reserve since the 1970s. To find out what's happened here, I've come to see Phil Taylor, who's in charge of the RSPB Seabird Recovery Programme for Scotland.
Bloody hell, look at that. That is incredible down there.
The cliffs here are undoubtedly spectacular, and at first sight all seems well.
What we're looking at here is still a lot of birds, but it's not what it once was.
How many kittiwakes were there here on this whole headland?
On this whole headland,
yeah,
there was about 5,500.
And now how many are there?
500.
A 90% decline.
A 90% decline, yeah. A tenth of the birds that were here in 2000 or 1999 are now breeding here. Birds here haven't been able to raise enough young to replace themselves. So we've got an ageing population all the way along these cliffs.
So you start to see something that's hollow. I mean, it looks good, but there is a sort of a failure going on inside what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's right.
Just around the corner, Phil takes me to a spot where the evidence of decline is much more graphic.
This is a photo taken back in the 80s of this exact same cliff.
Yeah.
And you can see this entire centre section here in the photo full of birds.
It's
an entire high-rise flat of kittiwake nests. And in this area here,
there are hardly any. That's incredible. What explains that? Why should there be a failure here?
One thing about kittiwakes is that they're a great indicator of the health of the sea around. We've got a full cliff of seabirds and some healthy sea out there. And now, in front of us, we have quite a bare cliff, showing that actually what we're looking at out here, this big blue mass that we can't really see into, isn't in the condition it should be. You could not think about protecting that bit of cliff there and the birds that live on it without also thinking about how we protect and recover that bit of sea there.
The sea provides all the food for our seabirds. In the North Atlantic and North Sea, their staple diet is the sand eel, a tiny fish that grows to no more than 6 inches long, but is intensely rich in oil and packed with nutrients. They spend most of the year buried in the sandy bottom, emerging in May or June to spend the summer feeding on plankton in the upper ocean layers where the birds can get at them. Sand eels have been exploited on an industrial scale, turned into pig food and fertilizer, and even used to fuel the Danish power station.
Suddenly there's a major problem. And
Bob Furness, a leading ornithologist, sees the relationship between sand eels and seabirds as key to their future.
It's absolutely clear that an excessive harvest of sand eels reduces the breeding success of kittiwakes. So for Shetland, when the sand eel stock falls below a certain threshold, the breeding success goes down dramatically. So the breeding success is nearly zero with low abundance. This was what led to the closure of the sand eel fishery off the east coast of Scotland.
When the sand eel fishing stopped in the year 2000, to start with, the bird numbers rose, but after that, the declines continued. Over on the Shiants and the rest of the west coast, the birds haven't suffered as much, suggesting local factors must be critical. The sea around the islands benefits from notoriously powerful tides, forcing the water over rough seabeds, stirring up nutrients that feed the plankton the sand eels depend on. And this could be one of the reasons the Shiants birds continue to do well. It's mid-June now. The main seabird colonies on the Shiants are among these boulder fields and grassy slopes. I'm hoping that the birds will have laid their eggs and that some of the chicks might have started to hatch.
There's nowhere on the Shiants that's thicker with birds than this. This is like the absolutely concentrated nub of it. It's not really zoned. You know, they are all in with each other. Puffin, shag, guillemot and razorbill are all together here.
It's a pretty hard and uncompromising place, but it does provide all kinds of different opportunities for the birds to nest and breed. The grassy slopes next to the boulders are perfect for puffins. They make their home in burrows, and although there's some infidelity in the puffin's world, most return with the same mate to the same burrow every year. This view inside the burrow, filmed on the Shiants, shows the puffin making preparations for a single egg, usually laid in early May.
I know that the male does more of the burrow building than the female, and often they're coming out absolutely filthy from the kind of dirty winter burrow that they're trying to sort out. But they also nest in hollows and crevices between the rocks. There's a puffin in there. Hello, puffin. Your sad face. There's an egg in there. I think that's a razorbill egg. And there's a bird in there. There's a razorbill in there.
The parents will incubate the egg for about 35 days, taking it in turns while the other goes foraging for fish.
Very dirty razorbill egg there. Another one here.
With me poking about, some of the birds may leave the egg, but they'll come back when I'm gone.
This is just the one egg that this pair's banking on everything this year, on that one egg.
Land birds lay a clutch of eggs each season over their short lives. Seabirds like razorbills and puffins lay only one egg each year to ensure one strong chick. But they do that over a much longer lifespan, breeding for 20 years or more, a strategy to carry them through years when fish are scarce.
Oh, and there's a shag spitting and hawking. It's in kind of this great yellow, like that. Shags are incredibly primitive, you know, they're 60 million year old birds and they're flying dinosaurs really, and this is like meeting a pterodactyl. It's just got everything. It's got this amazing green glamour sheen, this noise, you know, like a deep sort of voice of the earth noise, and those eyes, absolute emerald brilliance in those eyes, and living in this kind of slum hellhole. Oh, there are the babies. Ugly, ugly babies. Oh, look at the dirty little things. Amazing creatures. Amazing. I do feel you're meeting life in the raw here. It's as raw as it gets. It's so naked and stinking and sort of beautiful in a sort of unbelievably hard and unforgiving way. This is as good as I've ever seen here. You know, this density of birds. I just love this. I love it. Thousands of birds. They're like little moths. So all you hear is the wing flutter. It would just be such a catastrophe if they weren't here. They're as much part of this place as the grass.
For me, the puffin's appearance every year is deeply reassuring. It says that for now the natural world is working. But not long ago for the inhabitants of the Shants, this annual re-emergence of the birds meant something much more fundamental, more central to their lives, a welcome end to the hardship of winter.
I often think of the way in which people here must have looked forward to the moment when the seabirds arrived, not only as sort of spring coming, but as deliciousness arriving. These two forms of life, completely embedded Atlantic creatures that spend most of the year out in the ocean, and people stuck here on this island meet for this magical 3 or 4 months in summer.
It wasn't just here on the Shants that the seabirds were an essential part of life. The same was true for coastal and island communities all around Britain. Particularly in St Kilda, over 40 miles west of the nearest Scottish coastline, isolated in the Atlantic. Continuously inhabited since the Bronze Age, around 100 people lived here until they were evacuated in 1930.
In terms of St Kilda, seabirds and their eggs were critical to their survival. They were harvested in huge numbers, but there's also really quite a high degree of self-regulation. The St Kildans were allocated shares in the bird cliffs and indeed in the species that were taken. And you generally didn't take the breeding female or male when they were feeding the birds, because otherwise you were going to starve the young. The harvest was organized in a very formal way. It was built up by acute observation and the accumulation of knowledge over generations. I don't think one can emphasize that too much. But the breakdown of subsistence cultures means that there is no longer this intimate relationship with the natural world.
Today, communities have ceased to depend on seabirds for their survival. But on the Hebridean islands of Lewis and Harris, there are those who still remember taking birds on the Shants as part of everyday life.
No, we used to go out there to get the puffins, you know. Puffins were a very delicacy then. You could almost walk across to Mary Island with how thick they were, you know. Yeah. We would have a belt round our waist here. Once we had the belt full of puffins, we put them in a bag, and then when we got home with them here, we plucked them. Then they would be roasted in a pot roast.
We used to eat the cormorants here. How often? Maybe twice a week. We used to make cormorant soup at one time. But the other birds we used to eat as well was, well, guillemots and every seabird you can think of.
Donald Morrison, whose father was born on the Shants in the 1890s, also remembers when eating seabirds was commonplace.
The gannet, aye. Oh, they used to catch them in Malin, you can remember that. Yes, and pluck them, you know, and boil them. Oh, yes, they were quite tasty, you know, yeah.
The catching and eating of gannets, our largest seabird, is a tradition stretching back through the centuries. Bass Rock, just a mile off the east coast of Scotland, has the largest colony of northern gannets in the world, and a long history of their predation.
I mean, it's completely raw life and death going on.
Maggie Shedden has been bringing visitors here for the last 10 years.
Look at it. I mean, they were so desired. This was money. This was a prime crop to have. From about the 13th century, this was the industry.
across here in Canty Bay, this was very much where the birds were taken to. So the innkeepers there, they'd have their boats, they'd come out, collect the birds. They were then roasted, often wrapped in rhubarb leaves, and from there the oil drained off as they were roasting. Now that was gathered because it was thought to be medicinal. And
what would you use the gannet oil for?
It was thickened and made into a salve, so I think it was a cure-all. Rheumatism, gout, you name it, cuts, bruises. But if you think about it, it's incredibly rich in fish oil because their source is generally very oily fish.
Whoa! You came right down there for us. Do they take eggs as well?
Yes, eggs have been on Buckingham Palace dining table. So they really were, this was luxury food.
For centuries, people managed to harvest seabirds sustainably. But when they began to exploit them on industrial levels, the effect was disastrous. Here at the Kelvingrove Museum in Glasgow, there's a potent reminder of a time when greed pushed our relationship with the birds too far and drove to extinction a creature once found throughout the North Atlantic.
Oh, fantastic. The great auk. Look at him, he's huge. He's like a giant razorbill. Imagine that stomping around the place. This is the very first time I've ever looked a great auk in the eye. Looks amazingly alive, you can just imagine it.
These were the birds that people called the penguin first. And what we now know as penguins were only called penguins because when people went to the Southern Ocean, to Antarctica, they reminded them, the birds they saw there, of these. And flightless, you see its little wings are obviously no good for flying, they are just swimming wings. And this fantastic, thick, matted, feathery chest. And that's one of the reasons that they're gone, that people killed them because of that huge mass of feathers. You know, you wouldn't need many great auks for a pillow. And there's no doubt that in the 19th century, people went for these things in the most rapacious, greedy, thoughtless way. I mean, they literally herded them into their ships. They tied the sails from the side of the boat onto the rock and then herded the great auks into the hold across the sails, incapable of escape, couldn't fly away, just knocked on the head.
The nail in the coffin, as far as the great auk are concerned, would appear to be feather companies having exhausted supplies of eider down, taking the great auk for feathers. And the harvests were phenomenal, it would seem, year upon year, and that it would appear that that was the end of the great auk.
Its feathers were mainly used for bedding, but at the same time as the last great auk was killed in the middle of the 19th century, another market was growing that spread the net much wider.
The millinery trade was becoming far more important. In other words, it was fashionable for females to wear feathers in their hats one way or another.
The numbers involved were staggering. More than 5 million birds were killed each year to satisfy the American trade alone, with a story from the end of the 19th century of one enterprising business killing 40,000 seabirds to meet the demands of a single hat maker.
This led to an absolutely massive slaughter of seabirds. The best known example, perhaps, is at Bempton in East Yorkshire, where the birds were shot, the wings were removed, and the carcasses were then simply thrown into the sea. And it was also shooting for sport, going out in boats and taking pot shots at the birds. So there's a revulsion that begins to emerge. And this, quite rightly, quite understandably, was seen as unacceptable. and it led to the formation of the first, as it were, bird protection society, I think in Bridlington, which in turn led to the first of the Seabird Preservation Acts.
The Act was a turning point, the beginning of the end of thousands of years of harvesting seabirds. The moment when our relationship with the birds started to shift from consumption to conservation. But there is one place in the British Isles where the old relationship has endured.
At midnight on this last day of summer, 12 men of Ness will sail north for 40 miles to an isolated, cruel Atlantic rock called Solus. That lonely rock has attracted the Ness men for centuries past. They go there every year for a strange September harvest.
This ancient tradition, first recorded here in the 16th century, is the taking for food of young gannets known as googers. The oily flesh has always been prized by people here. It's preserved in salt and boiled before it's eaten, and even today is thought of as a delicacy. The hunters all come from a small remote town called Ness on the northern tip of the Outer Hebrides.
I think that made a huge difference. On the other side, it's not
I
so
wondered why
hard.
this place and its people had kept the tradition alive. Donald Murray has written a book about the Googer hunt. He grew up here in Ness and vividly remembers the atmosphere surrounding the hunter's return.
It was almost like, the centrepiece of Ness. It was like a carnival. If you can imagine a carnival where people queued and got buckets of, seabirds. And there used to be a queue. I remember being part of that queue, waiting for the hallowed bird to arrive. There was absolutely no doubt there was a thrill, because in some ways it was a statement of your identity.
Yeah. Did anyone feel when you were young that this wasn't the right thing to be doing?
Nobody. I think there was a kind of uniformity of view. Nobody questioned the need for it. And, at a time when I think so much of the identity of this place was under threat, you were saying to the rest of the world, we dare to be different here.
Yeah, I mean, what was the impact here of the growing movement in England to conserve these birds, people feeling that they were under pressure?
We've seen the outsider come in and telling us what to do, for centuries, language being banned, someone like my grandfather having to wear a bolt of wood around his neck for speaking Gaelic in the playground. So in a way, the seabird hunt here is basically saying, thus far and no further. We don't want you to take away this. We must retain some part of our identity because the rest is under threat.
This defiance led to the hunt being officially recognised in 1954, and it is now licensed to take 2,000 gannets each year. Today, the harvesting of googers by this group of men, although rooted in the past, is not just a ritual. There is still value in it. And although it doesn't harm the gannet population, it is an anomaly in modern Britain. But there is a place where taking birds like this is still widespread. Iceland, the seabird stronghold of the North Atlantic and home to over half the world's puffins. I've come here because I want to understand how the puffin hunting tradition continues as part of modern life. My destination is a tiny island called Grimsey, just on the Arctic Circle, 25 miles off Iceland's north coast.
How nice to see you. I've never before landed through a cloud of seabirds like that. There are millions and millions of Arctic terns here. Look, beautiful little things, just dancing over the whole airport. You hear them just screeching. And lovely long swallowtails.
In Scotland, Arctic terns are one of the worst hit species. Over 70% of the birds are gone.
They, like the kittiwakes, are surface feeders, you know, so they just dabble around in the surface of the sea, picking up sand eels and things like that. So this is lovely to see this here. Puffins! There are puffins there at the airport. Oh, look at that huge flock of them. You know, that's just, you get out of a plane and literally within seconds you're surrounded by some of the great birds of the North Atlantic. You know, people think of the North as sort of sterile, hostile and so cold, but this is just burgeoning with life. We shouldn't be amazed by this. I mean, that's what feels weird about it. You know, this is what the whole ocean should be like. It's incredibly exciting to see it.
Even the kittiwake is booming, the great barometer of the ocean's health. These teeming clouds of birds show that here in the north of Iceland, the marine system is working. Grimsey was first settled by the Vikings 1,000 years ago, and today 77 inhabitants remain. The islanders are largely supported by the prolific cod fishery in the surrounding seas. But fish isn't all they catch. For Icelanders across the country, seabird hunting remains a powerful tradition, nowhere more than on this island.
Hello there.
I'm here to meet Siggy Henningson and his wife Harper.
Hi. Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, how are you? I'm Adam.
Harper.
Very nice to meet you. Yes, Harper, so where is your husband?
He's hunting some puffins.
Is he actually now?
Yeah. Look outside the window.
What, he's out there?
Yeah.
Can you just literally walk out of the house and hunt puffins?
Yes, you can. There they are. Coming with a bag full of puffin.
Oh, no.
That's my son with the blue hat.
No.
He's coming over here with the bags. Flott, Guðmundur.
Can I go out there?
Yeah.
I'm here to see puffin hunting firsthand.
Siggy, hi.
But the matter-of-fact reality of it comes as a bit of a shock.
Oh, look. Well, look there, if you like, is the Icelandic tradition, made flesh. No one does this, you know, in Scotland anymore, no.
Just
no one. It's stopped, yes. And so it used to be a tradition in Britain to catch them, but not now.
Siggy's been puffin hunting since he was 12 years old, although he makes his living fishing for cod.
How far down is it here? Just
on the cliff.
It must be the only place in the world you can walk out of your house and catch a puffin just like this.
These cliffs are owned by the Icelandic government, who restrict the puffin hunting to 45 days each summer.
And so you rent this bit of land here.
Yeah.
Does that give you the right to take these puffins and nobody else can come here?
I always let my friends to eat, and when people ask me if they can catch to eat, no problem. Get them to fly.
Sweet. Okay, can I come next to you here?
Just here?
Yeah. Okay, so you have to hide a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're in orange.
Sometimes it's better to have something like this because he's very curious what it is.
Yes, the puppy thinks, what is that little thing there?
He wants to go closer and see.
Okay.
Nei, herðu, ekkert svona. Komdu hérna. You have to look at them when they are coming.
Yeah.
And pick one. If you look at
too many,
5 or 6, then you don't catch anything.
Right. Oh, wow! But that was yards out in the sky. Wow!
I'm struck by Siggy's skill, but I'm less sure how I feel about witnessing the killing of a puffin.
And just one twist, and he's done.
Is he dead? He's still moving. But
it's just the kid.
Afterwards, yeah. He's gone, yes. He's still flickering a bit of life.
It's just
the nerves, yes, I know. Yeah. If we just leave him there for now.
I want to be okay with this. Siggy's certainly retained a connectedness to the birds that we've lost, but it's much harder than I expected to watch a puffin die.
You know, a lot of people, if they see someone doing this, will think, how could you?
Every bird is okay to catch them if you just do it right and don't be greedy, don't catch too much. And if we saw some change of the puffin here, I think the men who are catching the puffin would stop.
Siggy and his fellow hunters are clearly aware of their possible impact on the puffins, but with looming declines elsewhere, I struggle to get behind the killing of any seabirds.
When you take a bird and you kill a bird like that, do you feel any sense of it not being the right thing to do?
No. I think it's just we catch them to eat.
Yeah.
So I don't see any different. This is just meat.
Yeah. It is still flickering its life. Yeah. It's strange to see the last moments of life going out of a creature like that.
Yeah. Shall we go and
prepare them?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Let's do that.
There's certainly nothing antique or nostalgic about Siggy's harvest. From his bright orange outfit and now this quad bike, there's an everyday modernity that I wasn't expecting. Instead of making a mess in the house, Siggy prefers to butcher the puffins in his fish processing shed by the harbour. And I naively think I can lend a hand.
There they are. Yeah.
Take it like this. Then you put, you can feel his neck. Take it like this. Like this.
And there you have the breast of a puffin.
Just the meat and the breast.
You do that as neatly as catching it. I mean, everything about you, Siggy, it's done with such economy and precision. I'm going to leave you to do it, because I will make a horrible mess of it, I think.
The dexterity with which Siggy deals with the birds is impressive, but I still cannot get past my lifetime's love of the puffin.
When I look at that, I think, wow, you paid quite a high price for this meat. You know, if you look, that is what we're getting, but this is the price in here, and it's quite high. Have you ever had people here who've come to tell you that doing this is a bad thing?
Yeah, we have sometimes, maybe twice. And one woman asked me how can I kill this bird?
Was she upset?
Yeah. She thought we were monsters.
Did you imagine that, or did she say that?
She said, "You're a monster."
Really?
Back at the house, I'm looking forward to some traditional Icelandic cuisine.
What is the method, Harper? What is your method?
There's no method.
No method, it's method-free. It's a nice bed. Yes, then you put sauce in. Hunt's, honey, bar mustard, barbecue sauce, improved recipe. I thought this is not an old Grimsby recipe.
No.
It comes from, let me have a look, can I just have a quick look? Comes from Omaha. Do you want all of this in there?
Yeah.
Takes skill to do this.
Yeah.
It's years of tradition in action. So what do? Just lay them out here? This is quite strange for me, you know, because I have loved puffins from afar all my life.
And so to see so many of them laid out here like this in this form is slightly troubling for me. I have to admit that. Is it too hot to handle? Oh, careful! Woo! I've got that, I've got it. My light is watering.
However conflicted my feelings, it's abundantly clear that there's no issue for Harper and Siggy. It's me that brings a hands-off conservationist culture that has no place here. But even knowing the birds are plentiful doesn't make this process any easier for me.
Come on, don't be stupid, Adam. Don't be sentimental. It's meat. Yeah. Here we go. Very good, very saucy. It tastes very much of the sauce.
Yeah.
Delicious. It's like a game bird. It's like a wild duck.
Siggy, of course, more than anyone, wants the birds to be here next year. Wherever people have hunted seabirds, this has nearly always been the case. His taking of puffins might be part of modern day-to-day life, but is actually rooted in an ancient subsistence relationship. I love the idea of this way of being, but in truth, in my world, the puffin's been so romanticized. The possibility of a relationship like Siggy's has long gone. Back on the Shants, the sharp end of our relationship with the birds is all about conservation. Although, in an echo of Siggy's, it still involves a form of hunting. These men are part of a network of volunteers who monitor bird numbers and movements for the British Trust for Ornithology. Jim Lennon and his team come here every year to ring and recapture as many of the Shant seabirds as they can.
It's absolutely stuffed with birds here, isn't it?
Yes.
It's now July, and all being well, the chicks will be hatched, and the parents should be bringing in fish for their young.
You can see that bird up there carrying a lot of sand eels.
Oh, look at that! Look at that! Isn't that lovely? That's the first lot I've seen this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sand eels. Isn't that right, Vilma?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
The team will be on the Shants for 2 weeks, and in that time they'll ring around 2,000 birds of all species.
Jim, is this a guinea mod?
Yes.
Oh, look at you! Oh, quivering. It's still got some inside of the egg here. God, imagine being born into that. Christ. Look at that's a sweet thing. That'll be a week old?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. And so how long before that one heads out to sea?
Another week or so.
Right.
I think it'll be gone before us.
Yeah, okay. So how old's that little one?
Week, 10 days, I suppose.
So half the age then, maybe?
Yeah, at least, yeah.
And this growth is entirely fueled by sand eels.
Sand eels, yeah.
Look at that chick.
The shag chicks are the first to hatch, but need up to 2 months in the nest before they can fly.
This is being in touch with the alien. Crikey. Hello. It's all right. No, we're friends. Yes, shit. I'm not going to eat you. There are people alive 10 miles from here who would have done exactly what you've done to eat this.
The whole idea of eating them is abhorrent.
Abhorrent, yeah.
Don't fall back.
Dave's hunting technique is not unlike Siggy's, even if the intention here is very different.
It's like fishing.
Yeah, it's like fishing. Bridal guillemot.
That's a lovely guillemot. So it does get a bit tangled on the wing.
A bit carpelled.
I've never been so close up to a guillemot as that. Isn't that beautiful? What a thing.
Yeah.
Dave, that looks incredibly easy. If you were here catching your dinner, you could get
any number you like, couldn't you?
You really could, and if you're reliant on it as a food source, you made the effort. There's no reason why you couldn't get several hundred in a day.
Yeah, there you go. That was niftily done, though. Look at lovely razorbill. Okay, lovely.
Also, the heads look very sort of 1930s Germanic.
Nazi, is that what you're trying to say?
Well, that kind of that art style, not necessarily the politics.
Right, yeah, they're sleek, aren't they? I think they look like gangsters.
It's got me. There we go.
It's got you. Sure you don't want to put it in here?
No, I'm all right. Bird's quite comfortable. Ring ending 995. Yeah.
The ring provides information on the age and movements of the bird, according to when and where it's re-caught.
Just above the ankle, so to speak.
Between the knee and the ankle.
Right.
This data helps build up a picture of how the colonies are doing and is invaluable in monitoring the current crisis.
The number we mark and recapture, you can begin to calculate, is the adult population stable and surviving? The last 2 or 3 years, the birds that are here are breeding quite well and there seems to be good fish supplies.
So they can accommodate not breeding very well for a year or two and the population will be fine on the whole?
Yes, but if it's 5 years, then they've got a problem.
Right, okay.
Yeah, okay.
And off.
We've come a long way from the traditional seabird harvest, via careless slaughter and even extinction, to arrive at today's conservation movement with all its sensitivities.
Yeah. Well, that looks pretty relaxed.
But there's an irony here. We are doing all we can for the birds on land, but I wonder if the greatest problem is elsewhere, that it's the ocean our birds depend on that we need to turn our attention to now. In the second programme, I look more deeply at the seabird collapse and discover the global forces behind the crisis.
In the mid-1990s, that boundary moved westwards and that allowed more subtropical water to flood this area west of the UK.
I joined puffin hunters in the south of Iceland, where some colonies are all but gone.
I think this summer we have never seen as few puffins as this summer.
Is that right? And tap into their knowledge from a lifetime with the birds.
We are still optimistic that they will come back.
I see first-hand evidence of how the marine food chain is shifting.
These are the rivals that the seabirds have got to compete with.
Meanwhile, on the Shiants, conservation gathers momentum as GPS tracking technology arrives. And a remarkable new visitor is enticed to the islands.
Hey, look at that. Oh, that is, what an exquisite thing. Look at that.
And on Bass Rock, I confront the idea of a seabird summer dominated by a single species.